to create something that haven't been created before is very difficult. I would say even mostly impossible because the history is long. But still, there are some projects that are absolutely amazing, and some of the creations that are done, let's say, early.
Yep.
Those are the pioneers of those particular periods. Those are important and those are interesting because they didn't have anything to look at back at the time.
Right.
So they were like kind of avant-garders.
Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode. Today's guest is Kate Vass, who is the founder of Kate Vass Galerie, a digital and physical gallery based in Switzerland. We had a fantastic conversation about Kate's journey, starting from her beginning in the art world, her experience in finance, and her experience curating, collecting, and promoting digital art. Thanks again for joining, and don't forget to subscribe and share if you enjoyed the episode.
So good to have you in the show. How are you?
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very well, thank you. And I think we postponed this interview for I don't know how many times. I think we
Yeah.
to schedule one like in June, and finally, end of October, we are making it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. We're making it happen now, which is I'm very, very, very excited because I've been following your journey, I think, for the last 2 years. You have been preparing so many shows, have been curating art, amazing, amazing artists. And yeah, I just wanted to ask you a bunch of questions. I'm very curious. How is it like to run, a gallery like yours, doing shows around the world and working with some of the best artists in the digital art space? You could say contemporary artists, but also artists that have been creating art for over 50 years, right? So maybe a good place to start, Kate, is how did you get involved in the art world? Is this something you have been doing since you were young, or when did you start?
I haven't been a stranger to the art world since childhood because I have a initial musical actual education, and I used to play piano a lot and play in theaters. And my mom, she's a painter and designer, so I think it was always within the family in certain. For me, art is more general. It can be music, it can be theater, it can be
Mhm.
architecture. It can be, of course, the art as we see it, traditional art. So it's a little bit wider. And
Mhm.
my education initially, when I was a child, I studied all of it. So let's say
Mm.
from ancient history towards contemporary. And when you learn music and when you study history of music, it's fascinating because you actually simultaneously learn a lot of what was happening at the same era
Mm.
with traditional art and with politics and with innovations. Because if you look at the music history, it's also very interesting how it evolved if we compare
Yeah.
with Renaissance and nowadays, it's yeah, very contemporary.
Yeah. And as you said, art is it takes many forms and shapes. And why did you decide to specialize in this? Because it's a niche, right? Digital art is a very specific kind of segment in the art space.
Well, to be honest with you, it kind of led me to this direction, the history, the life path of myself and the curiosity, probably also by looking for like some answers to my questions. Um, to be more precise, probably I was in different fields. I have various educations, and one of them is also finance and banking. And
Mm.
I was consulting a lot, and I was also like attending art basels, and I was collecting, and I was working with wealthy individuals who had like big collections as well back at the time. And when you have to do collection management or you have to do the let's say Lombard loan against the piece of work art, you have to look at the whole history provenance, so you simultaneously learn a lot. And one of the things that crossed my mind is that if I was, let's say, a wealthy individual as my clients are, could I possibly build a museum quality collection back at the time? And I'm talking now like back 20 years. I'm not talking about last 5 years. I'm talking about like 20 years ago. And that's probably would be a mission impossible even 20 years ago, because if you look at the contemporary art, traditional contemporary art back at the time, most of the works were already in the hands of either institutions or private individuals with private museums. And the waiting list to get one or good 2, 3 like works of top artists, you would be in a waiting line forever. Like you sometimes you have to wait for like 10 years just for this wanted piece of art to come out on the market, so you can actually, maybe you have a chance if you have enough finances to acquire it to your collection. So for me, it was already kind of late, in terms of like looking from this perspective. If I want to build something which is substantial, which has a quality, and with the means that I had, I'm not a billionaire, so I was like looking around and analyzing what's going on and what's happening. It fascinated me how the art market works, so I got myself involved and I started collecting photography because that was my passion. And somehow this innovation fascinated me in a sense. And I really liked the fact that photography was also back at the time was not accepted by traditional art world. So sort of refusee factor, how it found a way to become fine art
Yep.
with the ecosystem that we have now. And back at the time, again, I'm talking about, let's say, 20 to 15 years ago, there was still a possibility to collect and to build a very substantial collection of photography, with different focus, because photography is also very, very diverse. So I was specializing more in the vintage photography, where again you can like really look into the story. You can look how artists can be chemists from time to time. It's not necessarily about the composition, and they've been experimenting a lot with the camera, not only about the camera that was evolving over time, but also about the vision of artists that they had back at the time in the beginning of 20th century. So black and white photography, and that was literally the focus of my collection. And by building the collection, of course, you do engage yourself with galleries and curators and exhibitions. And I think I attended most of the traditional art fairs worldwide over the years, to understand how the system works, how the valuation works, why do they show this and why don't they show that, and of course there are many, many, many nice and interesting stories about forgeries, and like transparency is always a question, and then you have to have an expertise of another expert, just to qualify, okay, is it really like a particular era of this paper and print, if we're not talking about digital photography. So it kind of, it's an interesting market, and that captured my attention. And 2016, I opened up my advisory firm here in Switzerland, specializing in certain areas, particularly collection building and collection management, and also and from the perspective of finding the right works, if you're building or already have built a collection. And the gallery kind of idea came slightly later because of my reaction to what I've learned, I would say.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, because there are so many parallels to what you described with photography, right? That it wasn't accepted. Hello, guys. I just wanted to take some time to remind you about my NFT subscription via Hypersub. All subscribers get access to my token gated newsletter articles. You also get the podcast episodes airdropped into your crypto wallet. 8% of the revenue is shared across all subscribers. You also get access to my Discord server and participate in monthly giveaways and allow list opportunities. You can cancel at any time, and also you can control the length. You can go on a month-to-month basis, or you can get a whole year at once. This is also how I can keep going with the newsletter and podcast, and your support really means a lot. Find the link in the show notes below, and you can always DM me through my social networks if you have any questions. Thanks for your support.
Most of it was used to document things, very similar to what we see with blockchain, for example. Like when it was invented, to register certain things, that to keep documenting on the blocks, right? Whatever we are transacting and building. And in some parallel, you can say that photography also went through this stage of being seen as a documenting certain things portraitures in the traditional art. I see some parallels and it's interesting. And I just had a panel discussion in Budapest for 130 years dedicated to Andrei Kertész, one of the iconic figures in actually history of photography, Hungarian artist who lived also abroad in US. It was a discussion about AI and photography, and of course we had also certain people on the panel saying like, oh, we will never do anything with AI or generative AI. We are revisiting photography, and we completely reject what is new. It's total bullshit. I can even just say quote the person who was saying that, and
Yeah.
and for me it was like, first of all, I think if you're an intelligent person, you have to allow certain opinions, right? And you just have to make up your opinion, and then you listen to other people, and then if you are an intelligent person, you'll probably say, okay, this is an interesting perspective. Why don't I take that perspective and try to hear them out? Maybe there is something that I don't see through my knowledge and experience that I'm lacking, maybe. So I always try to take that path of just opening up my mind and saying, okay, well, maybe I'm missing something. We're always learning.
We are in a moment in time with the evolution of technology that many aspects, especially with AI, even crypto and blockchain, so many people have strong opinions, right? It could be in the art world, but it could be in other places. And yeah, it's kind of surprising how many so many polarized opinions, right? And I think AI, not only in art but in different aspects of our life, people have very strong opinions against it, right? And it's clear in AI art. It's very you can see that everywhere. When I go a little bit out of our, let's say, bubble, besides this panel, is that something that happens to you often, Kate, when you go travel around, when you go to different conferences, art events, when it comes to AI art? Is this something that you see often? People not really into it and having strong opinions against it?
Yes, of course. But for me, it's nothing new, because I'm here for a very long time. I mean, in our sense of timing in Web3, I think I'm a dinosaur. People don't think they're so long in the Web3 space. So I've seen it all. I remember like when we just started in 2018, 2017, 29, even 2019. And there was this, we didn't call it NFTs. So now it's a hype around AI, just to answer your question. But actually, it just evolved through the trends and different years. So 2018 was crypto art. So it was a crypto art. Okay. And so you are just dealing with this crypto art, right? Nobody used the term NFT. Of course, there was also no term AI art or something like that. So everything was like purely crypto art or blockchain art, and that is fine. I mean, this is a normal people's reaction when something new is coming out on the market, or they don't understand most of the things usually. Let's assume it's a normal human reaction, I think, to be scared of something that you don't understand about the change, which is, again, not everybody by human nature can accept or like. People like to be in a comfort zone. People like to be, let's say, they spent last 40 years learning and building, let's say, the things that they know. And then something else is coming out and everybody is like celebrating it, in a sense, saying, oh my God, it costs so much money. And then the media doesn't really help as well with its very one side promotion, I would say, like NFT and 69 million sale with people. So everyone is confused. And then after crypto art, the term NFT comes, and then everyone is like, WTF NFT, and then, okay, with 2 years of, again, media lives very well, celebrating and mixing it up on rotation about NFTs and, ups and downs and speculation, and again, creating additional fear, which is not helping. Instead of educating the audience, we create fear because probably it sells better. I have no idea. But I think, these reactions usually, from what I see, they come from lack of understanding, maybe lack of interest to even bother to learn. And because it's always easier to just criticize and reject. And sometimes it's just also like people don't have time for that, they're busy with their lives and with their business, and it works. So why bother? So I think, natively, let's say, tech savvy people, of course, or let's say people from financial systems, because they are anyway exposed to some certain degree to this kind of innovations of decentralization that took place with Bitcoin, I think, it was more natural, involvement for those groups of people to
Hmm.
be then interested and fascinated or rejecting and learning about
Yeah.
the space, rather than for majority, why would
And
they get involved?
yeah, exactly. It all happens so fast, right? I think that's the main thing. It happens in a span because you have been around, as you said, 2017, 2018. But I think it really started to appear in the media constantly around 2020, 2021, and it really exploded in a span of months or maybe a year, right? So it was just too quick. And yeah, as you said, the way how the media portrayed it and kind of the slogans of the space weren't the right ones. And I wonder, Kate, you mentioned you work with wealthy individuals that are collectors, right? They want to collect, they want to build, as you mentioned, impressive collections. So, has it? How is the working with these traditional collectors that are interested in the digital art space, in crypto art, in generative art, AI art? Do you think it's way more challenging than operating a traditional gallery? Any stories you can tell us from working with traditional art collectors?
What kind of story do you want to hear?
The
I just don't know how
interesting ones.
to, because you incorporated a couple of questions within
Mm,
your sentence. Let's say they are both, right? They are traditional art collectors and they are, let's say, crypto collectors. This is how we call them now, natively digital art collectors. And I think the space has changed also over years because, you see also the evolution of a collector.
mhm,
So let's go back to let's say 8 years ago. And that's when the Ethereum just was born, right? 2017. And with the first exhibition, it was on photography in the gallery, physical exhibition. I remember myself, it was still a living artist. He died, unfortunately, a couple of years ago. He was already at the age where I really wanted to still give him like a recognition and solo show, um, because he lived through this, let's say, evolution of camera. So he
mhm.
started when it was a film camera, and he created the later works with a digital camera. And you can also see, the evolution of his career through development and innovation. And I asked him, because photography market is also a very particular one. They like to take the work and make it as an edition, 3 or 5 or 10, and then price it from, let's say, just a simple example. Let's say we take edition of free, and the first edition will be like 1,000, second edition will be 1,500, and third edition, which is the last edition, will be, let's say, 2,000. So it's
Okay.
the
Goes
price
up.
the price is increasing
Hmm.
by the edition, and that's very interesting because for web free, it's not a typical choice, right?
Yeah.
And those are prints.
Hmm.
even if you Even if we talk about contemporary digital photography, this is how the system sort of works. So the digital file usually is never for sale. Nobody even thought about it. So I remember 2017, and I'm doing the show, and I'm talking to various artists, particularly the ones who are more contemporary, I would say, using already the digital camera. And I was like, guys, I'm not really interested in showing the prints and edition of prints. Honestly, like for me as a collector, that's not what I care about. As a photography collector, when I see the digital photography, I care about the digital file. Can you sell me the digital file? And everybody was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? You must be mad. Like, why would, no, 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 we are not going to sell the digital file. How do we even sell it? And then we started considering, so if we are to decide to sell the digital file, because for me, it's a core, it's a heart of the work,
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
natively digital. Like I want to have a possession of that file, and then if I want to do edition of prints, I'm going to do edition of prints.
Mm,
Please
yeah.
don't stream it for the photography. No, I'm joking. But yes, I mean, this is exactly the question I had in 2017. Like the question of valuation, if we talk about the contemporary photography.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not questioning how the system works. It works, and I'm happy for that. But I wanted to look at it from a different perspective, from my perspective as a collector. I invest money. I want my money to be safe. And
Hmm.
edition of prints is not going to help me, sorry, to preserve the value of the work. That's how I see it. Maybe because I have financial background and I look at this also as an asset in some certain way,
Yeah.
but it has to have a certain logic. And I said, okay, can we do something about it? And then
Yeah.
a couple of photographers were open to this idea, and we started investigating them. Okay, how can we do that? So if we do transact, and sell the digital file, most of the times it was not a new market already. There were some video works which was collected by museums, for example, but most of the things were like USB on a USB stick, and then
Right.
you create an artifact around the USB stick, and then you present
Hmm.
it to the collector, and then the collector is supposed to save a USB stick. Imagine if in 20 years the USB stick is no longer
Yeah.
applicable, and imagine with a new device, what you
Yeah.
do with that. Then you have to, of course, anyway digitize the whole thing and preserve it digitally. So these were the questions back at the time for me, and we spent quite a lot of time. Also, I did a lot of events, educational events. I was inviting some copyright legal guys, to discuss the copyright issues, digital, physical, these kind of things when you deal with natively digital photography in that time. And then also, how can we transact, without leaving any traces, Dropbox, hey, or Google Drive, or whatever,
Right.
a WeTransfer. Back at the time, now we have maybe
Mm.
more possibilities, but still, it's still, every, like, once you put it there, it's there somewhere. So
Hmm.
there was no possibility to actually, to prove this thing.
Yeah. To prove the transaction, right? To
And
prove the
then
transaction.
Ethereum
Yeah.
happens, and
Hmm.
imagine my happiness back at the time was like, oh my god, but that's the solution. And then, the whole kind of puzzle clicked for me. And I'm like, okay. And that was already 2018, when we could, like, the beginning of 2018, when I learned that actually Ethereum is just around the corner. It's in Zug. It's also possible to do something with its non-fungible tokens and
Hmm.
art, and we can prove this transactions and transparency and everything. All the questions were answered in one solution. Couldn't believe myself.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God, how can I buy Ethereum and Bitcoin now?
You were early and you went all in. You saw the problem, you had the problem, and this was the solution
Yeah.
for your particular problem. Did you thought that it was
But,
gonna take
but
off
trust
the
me,
way it did?
the artists were far away. I mean, the photography artists were far away from even accepting that. Putting something on what? Blockchain. What? Bitcoin. It's
Mm.
the same thing. So it was extremely difficult. So even you may notice that photography came very late in the blockchain.
Hmm.
We had,
Yes.
we had only one platform, 2020, it was called Ephemera, which was actually focusing on photography, the first
Hmm.
blockchain platform, ephemera.com. And I think it still exists, but they're not very active, because for photography, I explained to you how the things work, right? So that's
Yeah.
why it kind of came quite late. And then now fellowship is doing a good job, also started with photography,
Hmm.
bridging the classical photography and then AI and post photography, let's say synthetic photography. Yeah, like only 2023, right?
Right. Yeah.
But back in 2017, 2018, it was for sure mission impossible. But that was a tool. I mean, that was a tool, and that's when I also learned that there were artists, nothing to do with photography, but there were artists that actually create work, conceptual works with blockchain. Rhea Myers,
S-
McCoy's, Kevin Abosch. And I
mm,
was like, oh my God, that's the art I want to show, because that literally reflects the zeitgeist. And this is what I want to focus on, to bring this sort of medium through the conversation, through art, to the wider audience, to be accepted, because that's the revolution for me. I was pretty sure that traditional model will not work in finance and will not work in art. Very
mhm.
early. But that's the reason I left finance, and that's the reason I did the gallery the way I did it.
No, that makes the way how you tell it is the whole story, right? And then how everything clicked. That's exciting. And I wonder, Kate, you mentioned a couple of artists there, the McCoys, which were on the podcast, Kevin Abosch, um, Rhea Myers, and I wonder when you curate now these days, and maybe over the past 2 years, when you put a show together, when you are ideating what you are going to do next, what are you looking for? So can you describe what you are looking for in digital art, in generative art, AI art, any kind of medium?
It's a very good question. Um, it's a very simple answer. Whatever fascinates me, whatever brings emotion in me, I would say novelty of
Hmm.
either technology or novelty of, let's say, a project, or both, or anything that I haven't seen before. And that is very difficult because I've seen many,
Hmm.
many, many things in various sectors. And from the design to, let's say, architecture, and then back to traditional art and music and here and there, like, to be innovative, or let's say to create something that haven't been created before, is very difficult. I would say even mostly impossible, because the history is long. But still, there are some projects that are absolutely amazing, and some of the creations that are done, let's say, early.
Yep.
Those are the pioneers of those particular periods, and
Hmm.
those are important, and those are interesting because they didn't have anything to look at back at the time.
Right.
So they were like kind of avant-garders of our
Yeah.
blockchain kind of system, So they
Yeah.
took it and they created something, either if it's with AI algorithms, or building these new systems, or experimenting with neural networks, or if it's like art blocks, what they
Mm.
did, fantastic.
Yeah.
Like nobody did that before, right? The technology was there, but only them placed it together. And then all the others who came after, that's also fantastic, but that was after. So
Yeah.
this kind of
Yeah.
firstism is sort of important. But I mean, now it's a bit difficult to impress with being first, and it's not
Hmm.
even becomes less and less relevant when it comes to curating shows nowadays. So I think it's about the quality of work, and I look at the digital art as more like a conceptual art, and it comes from the idea. So if idea is novel, and the idea reflects something that is very burning issue, like let's say topical,
Yeah.
and the implementation and execution is excellent, of course, why not? Certain
Nice. Yeah.
exhibitions they fit a certain, let's say, mission. At
Hmm.
least I try to have physical shows which have a certain mission, that little mission that I wish to achieve. Like for example, last year, art salon in Paris, because everything was so digital, and 2022, 2023 was kind of sad situation, to be
Yeah.
honest. If you remember, in the market, and there were
Yeah.
mostly digital art was exhibited on a screen, and sometimes not in a very nice form. And it's kind of devaluing many, many works that shouldn't be placed in, or misplaced like that.
Hmm.
And we all know that, screens is a big topic, and the quality is still not there, how to exhibit digital art. So I thought, like, okay, you know what? Forget about the screens. Let's go physical, because actually I want to communicate to the traditional art collectors that natively digital art is beautiful.
Hmm.
You can live around the digital art, and you can fall in love with the physical object as well, as far like, not necessarily only with the video or animated thing, or just purely a token on the chain. And some of them
Yeah.
artists create absolutely outstanding works that deserve to be presented physically as a fine art print or performance, or plotter drawings or paintings even.
Mm.
So that was exhibition that one I wanted to communicate to traditional artists, and I think we collaborated with Didi, with Le Monde Didi,
Hmm.
and I think he also had the same message, because he collects both from contemporary art and, of course, also generative art. And that was the mission of the exhibition,
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
set things that is easy to digest for the audience.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've seen, I mean, there are so many amazing prints also, the plotting, right? The plots. I've seen some plots and they look amazing, right? When done correctly, high quality, they are beautiful. And it's something that I think people aren't still used to it, right? Because this is a machine that translate code into art, but you can see it physically and you can see the whole process, right? And it's challenging for the artist, right? Because they need to code it in a specific way, and there's so many things that involve plotting, right? And creating. I think the translation from digital to physical is very challenging to do it properly. Um, so that was a great show.
Some of the works are not don't need physical presentation. Like if it's purely a blockchain art or on chain, and it's a concept that is actually the idea is living within the blockchain, then of course, why would you care to do something physical out of it? So it has to make sense.
It
But
has to make sense.
yeah, if it doesn't make sense, I would never vouch for let's create NFT to the physical painting. Why? Like to digitize and spend money to create the NFT and don't care about anything. It has to make logical sense, and it has to add some sort of value to one or another, either analog or digital.
Kate, you mentioned novelty. You mentioned that you're looking for novelty for something that you haven't seen before, but it's getting more challenging these days, right? Because over the past years we have seen a lot of things. There have been amazing artists working, I mean, different ways, different platforms, different mediums. So today, what are you looking for? So what are you excited about these days when it comes to digital art? And I know it's an ambiguous, it's very open question.
To be honest with you, it's hard for me to keep track of everything what is happening in Web3.
Yeah.
I can only say that the innovation, like the tools, layer tools, or zero knowledge proofs, or like Rodeo, what has been built, now recently, as a platform, and they're building now social media purely on chain. Those kind of projects, they really, really fascinate me. I see how many user-friendly, let's say, tools are available now for the artists to be independent, to create their own smart contracts, to tailor make something, to build something on chain, which was not possible before. And I remember, like, we were struggling, how can we make sure that the provenance is there, that it's an artist, who is kind of minting on the chain, and then, we build on that, through the years on one contract, everything is there. And now it's thanks to builders, literally, like to the developers. So I keep track on that because this is important to the gallery to stay up to date of all what is happening within this kind of certain niche, to make sure that we have good provenance when it comes to blockchain art, and when artists are minting usually on their own smart contracts. And when it comes to novelty, usually if I curate an exhibition, I know exactly what I want to see. So I like, if we talk about Interthinking, for example, which opened last Thursday in Budapest, it was a show which we planned, let's say, since March. So that's to the next question that you also emailed me. How long does it take to build the show? To build a good show, it's a minimum 6 months. You have to curate, you have to, I mean, everything what we exhibit usually, it's never been shown before. It's an exclusive work. So it takes time, and quality takes time to actually create work. So to sleep on it, then think, okay, can the artist can actually be interested, or is he inspired by the project? Does he want to be involved in the show? Then another month, okay, we start building, and then start the discussion. What are the concepts? How can we build on this concept? What would be the most interesting angle to capture? For example, in this case, it was an intergenerational dialogue between the fathers of, let's say, pioneers, Hungarian pioneers that are very dear to everyone's heart, like Maholnát, Vera Molnar, Vasarely, Nicola Schöffer, the father of cybernetics. Like, I mean, all of them inspired millions of artists, actually, through the last, let's say, decades, not even only our generative artists. So, here it was like, okay, how can we capture that? What is an inspiration, and what kind of artist? I immediately connected in my head. Okay, I think about Maholnát, I'm like, Marcelo Rodriguez would be amazing, because even subconsciously he doesn't know that, but he has.
But you see a relation.
I see the relation, so I contact Marcelo and say, Marcelo, I see the relation. Do you feel the same way I feel? It's like, totally. Like, wow, thank you for asking. And then I think about Kepes, and then I think, because we are in a close, let's say, communication with Kevin Obosh, I was like, you did something with shadows. do you remember? He's like, yeah, totally. I was like, well, Kepish, yes, totally. Yes, that would work. Fantastic. And then and then I go, okay, distortions is one of the works that I always dreamt to actually adapt to my photography collection by André Cartège. And distortions, they are very expensive, they're unique, and they were only 250 ever produced. So they're mostly in the private collections and quite pricey. And I'm like, if I think about the distortions, and again, knowing the story of how Cartège was using the camera and what was the message back at the time, I'm like, Mario Klingman, definitely Mario Klingman. And then I talked to Mario, I'm sorry, do you know Cartège? Like maybe here. She's like, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I know where you're coming from. I totally get what you're talking about. And then it clicks, and
Yeah.
this is how usually I curate. So I was like, okay, I have an idea. And then I know there is some energy between one and another. You can't explain it, but then the result is absolutely great. And this is literally when we talk about this show.
That's exciting. It's you said it went live. It's open now, right? And
Yeah.
until when?
And it will be till, let's say, first weeks of January.
Okay, so there's still a couple of months.
3 months for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a big show. Some works are super heavy. They are like museum quality work. So yeah, if you have a chance, please.
Yeah, after this show, Kate, anything else? Are you working already on a new show, or do you usually take a break for some time before starting a new one?
To be honest with you, it's I tell you, like, if you want to have a program, you have to already plan everything back in February, March, and April in order to succeed in October, November, December. So I think in April I was feeling very ambitious. I don't know why, and I said, you know what? Why don't we do one show in Berlin in September, and then we open Budapest show in October, and then in November we are gonna do just like little workshops, interviews, conversations here in Zurich, and then in December we go and exhibit in Miami. And
for Art Basel.
Yes, and this was the plan, and now I'm like, oh my god, it's difficult to catch up with the rhythm that I set for myself, but I already I already applied, I'm accepted, I have to show, so now I have to build. So I'm busy. I'm busy building the program for Miami, Untitled.
Okay. When do you think it will be announced? Anytime soon for Miami?
Miami is going to take place during Art Basel from 4 to 8 of December. It's a beautiful location on the beach, so everybody can commute and just cross the road to this tent, and it will be many artists. I would say, yeah, it's going to be small but fine.
Nice. Yeah, I hope I can make it. I was there. I think last year.
I can tell you there will be some works that again never exhibited before, and some of them will be really, really beautiful, like in person.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll be looking for that. And Kate, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for sharing your journey. I hope we can do this in the future. And yeah, thanks so much for sharing your time, Kate.
Thank you for inviting me and finally meeting after so many.
Yeah. Hope I can see you in one of your shows soon. Have a great day, Kate.
Thank you. Bye.